Hello, Simon Rainier, Link Sarmansari out of Kamloops, British Columbia. And this is the first of my bushcraft series, Night in the Woods. Aha, aha, aha. So, it's depressing to me just how many people are afraid of being out in the wilderness. I think it's all of our birthright to be comfortable in the woods, in nature. Regardless of season or anything. A lot of the people I know don't, and even when I talk about camping as in campsite camping rather than like backwoods camping, both of which I've done, even when talking about the safest possible camping in the most easily accessible campsite, people are afraid of it. I even had a few comments of, aren't you afraid of getting eaten by bears? First off, no. I'm far more concerned about, for example, elk than I am about bears. I've had a number of close encounters with bears, and more often than not, they just want to leave you alone as much as you want to leave them alone. The thing about prey animals is they don't have as much fear because if a predator gets hurt, he can't eat. Grass doesn't run away, so prey animals tend to be a lot braver, and elk are really damn big. Moose kill more people in Canada than I think any other wild animal. Cougars are a concern, but yeah, that's another story. The next thing people will often say is, oh, you go out in the woods. Does that mean you know how to find food to eat? Yes. Yes, I do. But at the same time, that's really not generally a priority for me. So, I want to talk just a little bit about sort of what your priorities are if you are lost in the woods. And to preface that, we're going to talk about what is called the STOP method. And it's basically a way of situating yourself if you're lost in the woods, and specifically at the moment where you realize you're lost. So, STOP is an acronym, S-T-O-P. First one is S. And the way I like to think of that is squat. I've heard it as sit, I've heard it as stop. Anyway, to make you stop moving, take a moment. The reason why I say squat as opposed to sit is especially like now it's winter. You don't want to sit on the cold, cold ground. You will lose body heat way too fast, which as we will see is a major concern. So, take a squat. This will stop panic from setting in. As we realize something has gone horribly, horribly wrong, we tend to panic and want to run around. It's a very standard response. And it will just get you more lost, more often than not. Hey, Griffin. Dog's exploring. He's not so happy with the cold either, honestly. So, take a squat, take a few deep breaths. Next is, take stock. Empty your pockets. T. Figure out everything you have, from articles of clothing you wear to everything in your pocket. In my pocket at any given time, I have keys, I have my wallet, I have pen and paper, I have, if I know I'm going to be out in the woods, I'll have some very specific items with me. I always have, Griffin, it's okay, we're going home soon. Does not like the cold. Biggest princess, this dog. Okay. Yes, come say hi. Oh, I love you too. Anyway, where was I? Take stock, empty your pockets. I always have a knife on me, day-to-day wear. All useful things, even something like a watch. This could be used as a reflector for overhead planes if we can get it to catch the sunlight properly. A little game I like to play is empty my pockets and figure out an alternate use for absolutely everything that I have. For example, the watch. Use it as a reflector. What can a pen be used for? Any paper you have is a great fire starter. That kind of thing. Next is O, observe. What's around you? Is there a noticeable slope? Is there a stream? Generally speaking, if you follow a stream, it will lead to a larger body of water and eventually will lead to civilization. Can you hear sounds of traffic? I can. I'm not that far out in the woods. I'm kind of cheating on this one a little bit because, yeah. So, observe what's going on around you. Finally, plan. Make a plan. Figure out what you need to do. Is it better to stay or is it better to go? Conventional, I remember as a kid, like you learn, if you're lost in the woods, stay put. The more you know, the more you realize that may not always be the best option. A lot of times it is. But a perfect example right now is like if I'm staying still right now, my body temperature is just going to be dropping, and that could get dangerous. I gotta keep moving, so I'm gonna keep walking. I know exactly where I am. Home's that way. Practically see the road from here, actually. So, if I'm lost and I can see the road, I'm probably not actually lost. Train tracks is another good one, or power lines. They have to lead somewhere. Any kind of navigational aid. We'll talk about proper navigation another time. So, that's the stop method. Squat. Take stock. Observe. Make a plan. S-T-O-P. Finally, we have our priorities. And it's the rule of threes. And basically, it's a good way of establishing what we need to worry about first. And it's units of time. First is 3 minutes. You can die in 3 minutes from injury. I've heard this one done as 3 minutes from lack of oxygen, but in my experience, if you can't breathe, that tends to sort itself out one way or the other. But you can bleed out in 3 minutes. So if you are bleeding, deal with that first. Hey, you're okay. You're okay. It's not that cold. Come on. Come on. Next one, because it is cold, you can die in 3 hours from exposure. I am not dressed to be out in this weather long term. I can last that 3 hours easy enough. If I keep moving, I can last a lot longer. But if I start sitting still, especially if I'm sitting on the cold ground or a cold rock that's been trying to absorb as much heat as it can, my body temperature is going to drop really rapidly, and that will very, very quickly get dangerous. So what I'm going to do is, as soon as I'm done filming this, I'm going to keep walking and get back to my nice warm car. It's worth mentioning as well. It's far, far easier to stay warm than it is to get warm after getting cold. Part of that is do not, under any circumstances, get wet. If it's a hot day, try not to sweat. If it's a cold day, don't go walking through rivers. Seems obvious when you stop and think about it, but I've heard of situations where people will try to cross a stream or cross a river that they think isn't moving very quickly, get cold, catch hypothermia, and everything just gets so much harder in a survival situation if you are dealing with anything else rather than just the immediate problem. Don't make it worse for yourself. So, 3 minutes from injury, 3 hours from exposure. You can die in 3 days from lack of water. They'll say, don't drink out of wild water sources without boiling first. Sometimes that's not an option. Running water is better. Closest to the source is better. I've heard it said as well, if you're thinking you'll be rescued in a couple days, Giardia is not as much of a concern as it could be. However, it's still better to be safe. We have snow up here now. Do not eat snow to try to satiate your thirst. Melt it first. Apparently, for whatever reason, I don't understand how this works, but eating snow can actually dehydrate you faster. So, don't do it. Next, that's 3 days from lack of water. 3 weeks is lack of food. At that point, you've been out in the woods for quite a while. These are not hard and fast rules, but they are kind of good general guidelines. Food is absolutely not your first priority. Won't be for days. As a modern culture, we are not really used to feeling hungry, so that's going to be one of the fastest things we start to feel uncomfortable-wise. But deal with your other priorities first. This is literally the last priority is food. you can survive for weeks without it if you have to. Having said that, there's lots of things to eat in the wild. One of the great things that's plentiful around here is evergreen. In large enough quantities, it is toxic, but the needles are actually a really great source of vitamin C. So that's something to consider as well. So yeah, stop, squat, take stock, observe, and plan. And rules of threes. You can add 3 minutes from injury, 3 hours from exposure, 3 days from lack of water, and 3 weeks from hunger. Next time, we'll go into a whole lot more detail and start talking about some more fun stuff. Also, not in there at all in any of these things, but for God's sakes, make sure someone knows where you are if you're going out in the woods. Way too many times you hear about people going off and disappearing. Just on the radio the other day was a couple of hunters who got found by a search party. They didn't even realize that they'd been reported missing because they didn't bother to tell anyone where they're going. So make sure someone knows where you are if you're going anywhere, especially where there's no cell reception. And don't always rely on cell reception. It can be spotty anytime you're anywhere near mountains. And I'm just going to start rambling around here. Yeah. Hope this is helpful.